Good morning. Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for president. When I began, I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign. I said I wanted Americans to have their voices heard. I have done that. I have no regrets. And although I will no longer be a candidate, I will not stop using my voice for the things I believe in. Our national debt will eventually crush our economy. A smaller federal government is not only necessary for our freedom, it is necessary for our survival. The road to socialism is the road to ruin for America. Our Congress is dysfunctional and only getting worse. It is filled with followers, not leaders. Term limits for Washington politicians are needed now more than ever. Our world is on fire because of America's retreat. Standing by our allies in Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan is a moral imperative. But it's also more than that. If we retreat further, there will be more war, not less. As important, while we stand strong for the cause of freedom, we must bind together as Americans. We must turn away from the darkness of hatred and division. I will continue to promote all those values, as is the right of every American. I sought the honor of being your president. But in our great country, being a private citizen is privilege enough in itself. And that's a privilege I very much look forward to enjoying. In all likelihood, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee when our party convention meets in July. I congratulate him and wish him well. I wish anyone well who would be America's president. Our country is too precious to let our differences divide us. I have always been a conservative Republican and always supported the Republican nominee. But on this question, as she did on so many others, Margaret Thatcher provided some good advice when she said, quote, "Never just follow the crowd. Always make up your own mind." It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that. At its best, politics is about bringing people into your cause, not turning them away. And our conservative cause badly needs more people. This is now his time for choosing. I end my campaign with the same words I began it, from the book of Joshua. I direct them to all Americans, but especially to so many of the women and girls out there who put their faith in our campaign. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for God will be with you wherever you go. In this campaign, I have seen our country's greatness. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, America. God bless you.
All right, just hours after Super Tuesday wrapped up, former governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, makes it official. She is dropping out of the race for president as that news broke overnight. And there you heard the official remarks, dressed in Republican red. There you go. Well, the big question was, how would she handle Trump? And now we have our answer. And notes of defiance. I'm curious as to each of you what your reaction will be. Up to Trump to earn the vote. I heard that, and I hope he does that. I wish him well. He'll be the nominee, but no direct endorsement. And interestingly, the Margaret Thatcher quote, which stuck out to me, never follow the crowd. Andrew, how did you read the tea leaves on that?
I think similarly, certainly didn't shut the door and certainly didn't say that I'm not endorsing Donald Trump. Over the weekend, she had said that, yeah, you had to sign this pledge to get on the debate stage, that you were going to support the Republican nominee. Donald Trump was not on the debate stage. So she said that it was sort of an evolution where she didn't feel that she was bound by it. You listened to those remarks just a moment ago saying, never just follow the crowd. That was that Thatcher quote. It certainly seems like in a couple months we could see Nikki Haley at Mar-a-Lago having a photo op and saying that the president has heard her out. She feels that he has sufficiently heard these causes, that she's she said it's his time for choosing to embrace more of those moderate or more voices in what she called the conservative cause. So I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple months before that convention we see a kumbaya moment between those two.
So she also said that politics is about bringing people into your cause, as you were just alluding to. And what I find interesting about that is not too long ago, Trump was telling people, like, hey, if you give money to Nikki Haley, if you support Nikki Haley, you will forever be banned from MAGA camp, and you will not. That is the direct opposite of unifying, right? So I want to get to Forrest and Haley, because this is going to be a task that the former president has to take on head on. And she said now it's time for Trump to choose. How difficult will it be for him to unify the Republican Party right now?
I feel like it's going to be pretty challenging for the guy. I mean, he has had a reputation since 2016 when he got into politics of just punching everything in sight. He's a very divisive character in American politics, and he's made a lot of enemies. And, you know, there is a big core of Nikki Haley's supporters that are never Trumpers. And how do you appeal to them after going through all of this, after hearing all of the name calling from the Trump campaign and all of the, you know, what the Haley campaign would say outright lies about her? Are they going to be able to recapture some of their voters? It's going to be an uphill battle for him, I think.
And when you talk to the Trump campaign, though, publicly, they express a sense of confidence in being able to unify the party. And you heard that in Trump's remarks last night from Mar-a-Lago, which really sought to portray him as the general election candidate, talking about unifying the country through what he's termed success. But a senior campaign advisor said that they view this as coming from a position of strength for unifying the party, and they are basing that off of the wins they have had this primary season so far going forward. And they're expecting to integrate the campaign with the RNC, as we are told from a source, quote, very soon. So from their perspective, they view this as a unified party already. But on the flip side of this, President Biden's campaign is looking at this as a potential source of strength for them, because they see the votes that Nikki Haley garnered and see that as a weakness for Trump, and an area where they can pick up more moderate voters because they view Trump as underperforming in that arena. So as Forrest said, it's going to be a key question going forward, guys.
Yeah, and Trump doesn't like being told what to do. And you basically heard Nikki Haley say, you know, earn my supporters' votes. And I don't know how he's going to take that.
Yeah.
Speaking of former President Trump, Joe, we understand that we already have a social media post from the former president reacting to Haley. What do we know?
There's nothing, folks, that we can say that's more important than this statement right now. We can put it up on screen, the former president weighing in. Nikki Haley got trounced last night in record-setting fashion, despite the fact that Democrats, for reasons unknown, are allowed to vote in Vermont and various other Republican parties. Much of her money came from radical left Democrats, as did many of her voters, almost 50%, according to this poll. At this point, I hope she stays in the race and fights it out till. I'd like to thank my family, friends, and the great Republican Party for helping me to produce by far the most successful Super Tuesday in history, and would further like to invite all of the Haley supporters to join me in the greatest movement in the history of our nation. Biden is the enemy. He is destroying our country. Make America great again. So that is fresh from the former president himself. A bit of a criticizing Haley off the top, saying that she got trounced last night, inviting towards the end of the statement Haley supporters to join him. But let's offer some contrarian analysis for a moment. I mean, just a few days ago, former President Trump was at the microphone and said, we're getting rid of the Mitt Romneys of the Republican Party. I mean, Mitt Romney was the Republican nominee of the Republican Party, what, 12 years ago? Does former President Trump need every single Nikki Haley supporter? Is he okay giving up moderate Republicans to President Joe Biden? I mean, we could be on the verge of a demographic shift here going into 2024, where you have some more moderate Republicans finding themselves all of a sudden being Democrats in November, and you have some people who maybe voted Democrat the last 10 years shifting Republican. Certainly the Trump campaign and talking with them, they think they can do really well with black voters in places like Detroit and Milwaukee, and they can do really well with Hispanic and Latino voters in places like Arizona and Nevada. We shall see. Very interesting words, guys, by the former president of the United States.
And I guess I look.
Can I?
Oh, go ahead, Haley. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to jump in on that statement there because it's interesting. He came out so strongly, strong words there against Nikki Haley, because one of the things we have heard the campaign say is that Nikki Haley is really kind of in their view, as they portray in the past to them. They're not focused on her. They are solely focused on President Joe Biden. And you haven't heard Trump recently bring her up, which is a really sharp contrast from what we saw in January, where he ramped up the attacks, where it was a real source of frustration, to where she kind of became what seemed to be a thorn in the side, to recent weeks where he didn't mention her at all. Last night, he didn't mention her once. So it is notable that he comes out that strongly on social media today, and that is telling in and of itself.
And that's the thing I find interesting, is that if you're a Nikki Haley supporter, now unclear about what you want to do in November, and you read that post, that wasn't exactly a welcome mat into MAGA world. That wasn't a unifying. You got trounced. Most conventional politicians, and Donald Trump is not conventional, and that's helped him. Let's be honest. He's the former president of the United States. Would have said, you know, after a hard fight, thank you, Nikki. So you bring so much to the table. Thank you for fighting the good fight. I want you on my team. You're a real American. It would have been all of that.
Right.
Said you got none of that. You got none of that. So if you're a Nikki Haley supporter, how do you read that post and think, okay, I'm with Trump now?
Right. It almost read like he had hit like save and send in the morning, like he wrote it out last night after the results.
It was long.
Until the end there, they said. But you talk to Haley supporters, and their concern is Trump's rhetoric. They hate the nastiness. And even if they don't love Joe Biden, this is a theme throughout. And of course, there's the court cases too. And we have seen in the polling that, yes, the court cases aren't going to impact the Republican primary, because these are the most, dyed in the red voters, the most conservative voters in the country who are casting their votes now. They don't care about that. They think it's a political witch hunt. They believe the president's rhetoric. Those are going to matter in the fall. The part of why Nikki Haley ultimately decided to end her campaign is because of how the schedule was playing out so slowly. This stuff isn't going to be resolved anytime soon, but it is going to be a huge issue in the fall with Biden versus Trump. And so these are all top concerns for these Haley voters, whether or not they supported Donald Trump in 2020. That could be a potential game changer. You talk to the Biden campaign, and they're kind of viewing it as their kind of ace up their sleeve. As all these bad polls come out, they say, yes, we get it, it's bad, but people don't really process the fact that Donald Trump is now going to be the Republican nominee.
And is that risky then to not take that seriously enough, and to say that, okay, well, when people see that this is these two men that are up, that will be against each other in November, that, you know what, hands down, we'll be okay, I think. Is that dangerous, though, for
it's totally
the Democrat
dangerous.
Party?
I think there's a lot of Democrats who are very, very worried right now. And you see some of the best polling we've had, New York Times Siena, which, we're talking about February, March polling. So it's not going to be predictive. But if you go back to 2020, Donald Trump never had a lead like we've seen in these polls at any point in the campaign. So now there's something going on. There is a problem, and it's going to depend on who it is, or either these gentlemen are able to motivate to come out, because we know that this is going to be an election decided by, we call them the double negatives. It's the people who dislike both candidates. What do they ultimately do? Do they vote for somebody? Do they stay home? Do they go third party?
So fascinating. Fars, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get back to really this question of whether or not Trump is going to have that kumbaya moment and try and bring some of these Haley supporters under the umbrella with kinder words and rhetoric. I mean, the problem that Donald Trump faces is that if we're going to get granular here down into the weeds, is that the base of supporters that he has, they love him for his divisive rhetoric. They love him for being a candidate who goes out and speaks his mind and doesn't kiss the ring of any politician. I mean, that's one of the core tenets of a lot of the Trump supporters that I've spoken to. And so, yeah, he may have one of those statements where he gives a softer response and appreciates Nikki Haley. But just like we saw with Governor Ron DeSantis, he said that he was going to retire the DeSanctimonious name. And then just a few days ago, He used it in a tweet. So obviously, that is just core Trump. That's who he is. He is a brawler, and he will always be. And so I just think this is going to be a really challenging thing for him to try and bring some of these Haley supporters who are already disillusioned by Trump under the fold.
And Joe, we'll give the last word to you, sir. How does the dynamic of this race change now that we finally, after a bunch of really perfunctory feeling political rituals, finally get down to what we've all been saying for months, the rematch? And here we are. Now that it's mano-a-mano, how does the flavor of all of this change?
2 letters, VP. That's the next thing we've got to be looking out for. Who does he select? And boy, will that tell us a lot about what he wants and what he needs to achieve. You could ask some presidential historians, and they say historically vice presidential picks don't matter. I think it's going to tell us a lot about the type of administration that former President Trump will want to have for the next 4 years. It would perhaps go a long way in bringing back some Haley supporters to the fold, if you will, if he's able to accomplish that. So that's the next phase of this, it feels like. But look, I think the Trump campaign deserves a lot of credit here. I mean, think about this. Imagine a guy indicted 4 different times, over 90 charges, facing criminal trials at the end of this month, and you just won the Republican nomination, not for the first time, the second time, but for the 3rd straight time in a row. The Trump campaign had a successful Republican primary. Now they got to figure out how to win in November.
You wonder what that says more about him or more of the party as a whole and the direction that it's going?
And the country.
In the country.
And the country. And look, conventional wisdom would tell you Haley would make a nice VP. That solves my problem there.
Right.
But a lot of bad blood there. And she's obviously a woman, and Republicans struggle on the issue of abortion. That could be an animating force in the election. But the loyalty hasn't been there. She's been critical of all kinds of things. So we shall see. But at least the field has been all the way narrowed. And away we go to November.
Yes.
Thank you.